welcome to another little talk. We're really happy to have you here with us tonight. As you know, Little Shadow Productions endeavors to shine light on interesting topics, people, ideas, and art forms. If you have any ideas for programming that you would like to see, please feel free to approach me or anyone on our team. We always say yes, it's just how and when. So come to us with any ideas that you have, and we want to do our best to serve them. With that, you should know that coming up in October, we have two really exciting programs that we have not run before. One is artist Jay Hahn is going to be teaching needle felting for Puppetry and Beyond. Yeah, that's going to be super fun. And the other one is Tyler Bunch is going to be teaching character development. We all watch people every day. Why not turn them into characters? So that is also going to be a really fun class. So check those out. And we have lots of exciting talks coming up, including, for those of you who have been here before, you have heard me say every single week that we have these talks on Tuesday because of Puppet Tuesday, hashtagged by our dear friend Ronnie Burkett. And I every week ask everybody to go ahead and contact Ronnie Burkett and ask him to do a talk. And guess what? This October, Ronnie Burkett will be doing a talk. What? Yes. So please do check them out. There's lots of really fun things. And yes, Patrick Wiegand, yes, Ronnie Burkett. And next week, our dear friend and colleague, Jimmy Helvin, is going to be talking about costuming from drag to puppets and what's all the correlation in between, which is going to be super fun, interesting, and hopefully a little weird because we like to get a little weird here. So yeah, that's what's going on. So without further ado, tonight, we have my dear friend, James Godwin. I don't usually do introductions because I do like the artist to bring themselves. But when I asked James Godwin for his bio, he put a whole bunch of things that I hadn't heard of before, which I'm super excited about. So
really?
Yes. So how can that be, right? So I'm going to read his bio to you just so that we're all coming from the same vantage point. So James Godwin is a performance artist and visual artist, writer, and puppeteer. As a solo performer, James has written several pieces, including Kludge or Kluge?
It depends on who decides what it's. I say Kludge, but okay. Kluge is the usual. Yeah.
I was making it German. Suitcase of the Soul, Lunatic Cunning, which won the Jim Henson Award for Innovation in Puppetry and a citation from Unima USA. And Alterman, a character that went on tour for 2 years doing live events for Coca-Cola. As a founding member of the Elementals Puppet Company, James wrote 3 pieces: Morph-O-Pod, Ichabod Revealed, and Bunk Bed Commando. As a founding member of Uncle Jimmy's Sturdy Basement, James co-wrote the book with the company and wrote the lyrics. And I want to acknowledge that our dear friend Tom Burnett is also here tonight.
Yay,
Tom! And Tom is one of the members of Uncle Jimmy's Sturdy Basement. There you are. Oh, tease. That was a tease.
Bird, I love you, man. Miss you.
Oh, gotta get the band back together, man.
I know, man.
So James, thanks for agreeing to do this tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me.
We have not hung in a while, so everybody gets to watch our stupidity together, but hopefully we can keep it like super intelligent or not.
We will.
Yeah, hello. So what I'm wondering is, first of all, you have a really interesting origin story that I don't know that everybody knows about. So I'm wondering if you can take us from your time as a visual artist into when you first started in puppetry.
Yes, let me try to make it as succinct as I can. Part of the Dirty Basement was Chuck Bob, which was a character played by John Pavlik, who was a student of my father's in college. We would do theater together because he was part of the student body that would do the lights, the sound, this kind of thing. When I moved to New York, he was living with another student of my father's in the East Village, and he was just kind of doing odd jobs. He was also working for National Marionette with, why is the name escaping me now? Sorority X, the Sorority X family. Mm-hmm. So he was living in a state park in his tent, and they were touring around. We found out later that he was part of the touring company that went to Kaylee Clemens's like 4th grade school to do a show. Anyway, so John had the puppet connection. I was doing like fancy schmancy, edgy performance art. And I was making masks and props and stuff. And I wanted to make a bird puppet based on this shamanic bird thing. So I bought one of those, it's like a lobster claw thing, like this. So I put some foam core on it, tried to make a bird, but it opened this way, so it didn't look right. It's supposed to open that way. So I got kind of obsessed to fixing that. And then I was hanging out with John, and he was working with the Baird Company by then, stage managing, sometimes filling in puppetry wise. They had a show at the, it was an off-Broadway theater, but close to Broadway. And they were doing Alice in Wonderland, the Baird Company. So it was Carfagno. Forgive me for not remembering all the people who are part of the cast. Bill Toast.
Witterman, or not then?
I think Witterman was probably in there. Yeah, I think he was. So I went to go see the show. It was Alice in Wonderland with a human Alice to do the scale shifts. And I was like, okay, this is cool. And then they would do variety afterwards. So they would go a little break, and then they would do variety. Bill Toast would come out and be like, hat face, ooh, hat face. And then they did these rope dancers. I think they called them Wally dancers.
I don't know, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so they're made just like a piece of thick rope. The female, apologies for gendering, but hair, and then the male was more like whatever, but made of thick rope in like check black, I think, technically. And they just danced to a zombie song, ba 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 ba, and it was just like, it was amazing, blew my mind. I went backstage. I thought there was all these mechanics that were built into it because I loved Henson because they all had like doodads, and no, it was just like people holding rods in the dark, dancing. And I was like, okay, nobody's really doing this downtown New York in performance. Like if you go to a venue, because there used to be a lot more venues you could go to. You could go and just like show up, do your thing. Comedy was kind of on the way out, at least stand up. And so with John, and at the time, my girlfriend Gina and my other friend Jim, we would rehearse stuff, kind of like bodge it together, put it all on a cart, go a couple blocks to the venue, have our own lights, because there was no lighting. So that was the whole trick. John was big about lighting. He was like, we have our own lights. It makes all the difference. I was like, you're exactly right. So we'd plug in on our lights, they'd turn off all the lights. We'd have like, and that's when it started. It was just like peeling the onion back from that. That's really it. And, John's enthusiasm for it, my obsession with it, how audiences responded to it, because a lot of people were jaded, I think, at the time, because there wasn't a lot of visual theater being done on like a super low tech, like we just load in, we'd all be in blacks. We'd be, head to toe. We had janitors outfits. Yeah. We would walk out, set up, do the gig, and then walk out. So nobody knew who we were. It was kind of like I don't know, Kiss or a Devo kind of thing. Yeah, so that's basically it. And then I got a job with Bob Flanagan building, and I lied that I could sew. And then he put me on an industrial sewing machine to do a boning that was about this big. And then I had to admit that I didn't really know how to sew, but he kept me on anyway. So I worked for Bob. We did a lot of SNL type jobs, and it just went on from there. Yeah.
A couple of things that that you said that just came up for me. One, John Pavlik having performed for Kaylee when she was a little kid is crazy. Kaylee Clemens is a puppet artist peer of ours who stage managed and performed with James for many, many years. Um, and that's just fantastic because in the
I
past
thought you knew that. You
I
didn't know
never,
that?
if I
Oh,
did,
wow.
if it's gone,
Yeah,
uh,
no.
like so much other information. She, she has now joined the list of many people that I've heard about literally in the past 2 weeks. I'm not kidding you. Who, oh, that person saw that person when they were in elementary school. Oh, that person saw that person when they were in high school. It's so interesting to see that lineage coming up now, you know, like it used to feel so one generational, like there's the Baird and people who worked with Baird, and now
Yeah.
it's and the person and it's so fantastic to hear stories like that. Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah,
um
and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Peter Baird was, well, he was doing the shows. He was the one running. He was responsible. Like they would go to the national festival, and John was always telling me about Peter and telling me about the history. And we ended up working on so many things with Peter, and he was just, I don't know if any of you, but Peter Baird was just the sweetest human and the most supportive. Because I didn't know I had no idea what I was doing, but he wasn't coming in like, well, you know what, if you do this. There was one time where he's like, well, you know, you broke the string because you put the eye hook in with this little needle nose pliers, and those have rough edges, so that you roughed up your thing, and that's why the string broke. And I was like, oh, of course, because I was
but,
still using eye hooks
but
at the
that's
time.
kind yeah, I hear the subliminal message, by the way, there of James does not like when people use eye hooks on marionettes. Take the hint.
Well, just one,
You
and the other one, but it's okay. Do your
I
own thing.
I'm just saying. um the other thing that I heard you say that really struck a chord with me was you talking about, and I do remember you saying this to me before, but you guys coming in all black,
Yeah.
because I used to perform way after like the surf reality days. Like I would go to those shows, but I wasn't part of it. I would stand in the back or like sit in a corner, like get out right before all of the cool puppet kids would come out. I would just go see the stuff and go. And there were a couple of slams that I was a part of over the years where that's what I did. Like no one knew I was there. And hearing you say that, but that was just because I was terrified, not because I was cool. I just didn't want anybody to talk to me. It sounded like a terrible idea to socialize. And, I was a
It
wallflower.
usually is.
I mean, so
That
I
way.
was right. Yeah. No, I was very, very afraid. So hearing you say that it's part of a thing somehow makes me feel justified in my fear. So thank you for giving me that gift just now.
Well, I just got obsessed. I was very obsessed. I'll use that word a lot. When I was already obsessed with Japanese tabletop.
Mhm,
I'm bunraku,
mhm.
um, because I really enjoyed the aesthetic of it, and I at the time I had a prejudice against the way marionettes were weighted, but I probably wasn't looking at good marionettists. But I was watching Bill Baird and stuff like that. But I also wanted to see a different kind of action on the stage.
Yeah.
And what I was seeing, what I could find, this was pre-internet even.
Mhm.
Um, there was a different kind of, how do I even say it? It's not better, it's not worse. It's just a different kind of how to present a living thing to an audience, right?
It's like a different magic almost.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Very well said. Yeah. And I got, we tried a million different techniques to do that. And then we rehearsed a lot and we fought a lot. I mean, there were three people on this puppet over and over and over and over and over again. And then we got to meet people like Eric Engelhart, Tim Lagasse, Jim Napolitano, Jim Krupa, uh, Randy Carfagno, Steve Witterman. Just that started to open up. And I was frankly surprised how supportive people were, because sometimes in entertainment, there can be like, they're keeping of secrets, whatever, and that's fine. That's understandable. I just found that the more I looked into it, and the more that I could see how other people made puppets, and that I was overbuilding everything. I thought it had to be all these doodads and bling blongs and ding dongs.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd see like this beautiful, simple mechanism in a bared, iMech side to side. Like, oh wow, yeah, okay, that worked.
Got it.
Yeah.
I was just watching Robin Frohard put some stuff online. She's asking people to come and help make birds for Little Amal's crossing across the Brooklyn Bridge.
She needs help?
Yes. So,
really?
yeah, because they need like hundreds of them.
Oh,
So,
that kind of.
yeah, help building. And so she was showing the different things that she was thinking about, and it brought me such joy because everything that she was showing was just like hands-on manipulation, simple, nothing's gonna break. Right, like this is just going to work every time, and the more you work it, the more elegant it's going to be, like it just warmed my heart, and it made me think about, listening to you right now, made me think about watching Bunk Bed Commandos. I saw that show probably 4 different times, and I never went with another puppeteer. I always brought civilians because I felt like mostly probably at that point in my life, I was more friendly with civilians than puppeteers. I probably still was afraid of everybody, but I also enjoyed the conversation because they were just so in awe of everything that they saw. Like Chuck Bob, I mean, what a ridiculously brilliant character. And they'd be like, oh my God, and that guy did the thing, and
Yeah.
and that having that honest reaction to characters was so thrilling to me. And I remember just watching you guys being like, what did it take to make this happen? I think the first time I saw it might have been Dance Theater Workshop.
Yeah.
And you guys are crazy.
Well, there used to be a dynamic in the the downtown scene, late
Mhm.
90s, whatever. But there was PS 122, there was Dance Theater Workshop, there was La Mama,
Mhm.
and various other smaller venues. And we was Tim Lagasse, Napolitano, me, and John Pavlik.
Just makes me laugh thinking about it.
And I booked the gig, and I just kind of wrote a synopsis of and David Lindsay Abair was the artistic director at the time at Dance Theater Workshop. Now he's a, very accomplished, and rightly so, writer of Broadway plays and musicals. Anyway, at the time, he was just like, this is cool. You guys want to try it here? And we were like, okay. And I was like, shit, now I have to write it. And so I wrote it, but then we'd go into rehearsal, and Napolitano and Jim Nappy Napolitano and Tim Lagasse or Lagasse, depending on what he likes now. They were both puppeteering on Between the Lions. So they were having these super long shoot days, and then they would come from Harlem down to the East Village where John had a friend that had a carriage house. I don't know how he swung it.
Nice.
That we could use at night. And so we started to rehearse, kick the story around, and then basically we would just make Tim play the old guy who was going over the bridge, and we just watch him do that over and over. Because we were just like, we don't know what we're doing. This is way more Tim, do the grandpa crossing the bridge. And then, they'd come in with stuff, we'd come in with stuff. And Jay Ryan, lighting designer, was totally into it, super supportive. That whole room at the time was like, it's not there anymore, but man.
That's good.
Yeah, especially for theater artists, it's really hard to get. No, it's not hard. It's challenging because everybody's spread so thin to have good tech support, good management support from front of house and all that kind of stuff. I'm like so grateful that we had that when we did, because it would be a different story if we didn't, you know?
Yeah. Do I? Yeah, I have an idea. Um, Something that you just alluded to, I never thought about until just now as a theme in your work. And I swear I had preparatory questions, but you're bringing new ideas to my mind. Um,
Do it.
so that show, I think, beyond the fact that the characters were all like off the wall, weird and wonderful, and the fact that you found a thread to bring it all together, and it was a loose thread, but a thread, and
Very
loose,
loose.
but loose enough that you cared. It makes me think of two things. One, I often tell people who are stuck, they need to go talk to you because James Godwin is the master of transitions. But because it's true. And the other thing is that it never occurred to me that part of why you're so good at transitions and masterful, I don't mean good, but like you are masterful at them, is because you've done a lot of collage work on stage. And it never occurred to me till just now. Bunk Bed Commandos, Uncle Jimmy's Dirty Basement, Lunatic Cunning. It's collages of stories and
Mhm.
art form, forms within the forms. And I feel like that's something that more people would benefit from giving themselves permission to do now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you don't have to write an hour-long show. As a matter of fact, a lot of people maybe don't, like, please stop. Like, it's okay to do 10 minutes here and 5 minutes here and 20 minutes here, and finding that thread that brings it all together is so beautiful. And I'm wondering what draws you to that, because it really is masterful the way that you do it.
I appreciate that. I've had a lot of help, and I've watched a lot of people who inspired me. And for some things, I had a good work ethic, but for other things, I was super lazy. But at the same time, super lazy, very, very lazy. I would let details slide. My rehearsal schedule's probably not so good until my later years, when I learned that, you need to do that. Um, it kind of became, it actually was a bit like, instead of doing a show, it would just be all transitions. So Tom and I, if he's still here, I don't know,
Yeah, he is.
Tom Burnett would bandy about the idea that what happens if it's all transitions and we take out any, content. So then what does that become? And because a lot of downtown theater was totally weird, you had the Alien comic, you had Karen Finley, you had Blue Man Group. They were all transitions.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. I mean, there was music in between and a little bit of thing, but they were like transition. How do you get this other thing to get on stage? What do you do to fill that time?
Yeah.
And so puppets is like one of the biggest, I guess, maybe instead of circus, maybe. How do you get the next thing to come on stage while you're doing the thing without 100 million people, or you get 100 million people, or whatever you train? So Tom, in his genius, we would talk about, what if it's just transitions with Dirty Basement? Because that's what we were doing. We had songs, they had meaning, they sounded good, the band was great, puppetry was amazing. And then we'd be like, well, where do we go from here? We just make transitions. And so a lot of times when I would totally croak as a solo performer, I would just say I was the master of the smooth transition. I would say it out loud and I would draw the audience's attention to how we were trying to get from one place to the other. Sometimes it worked story-wise, but it was always kind of a fascination, because when you go to see like Broadway or something like that, if you go to see Into the Woods now, the amount of acumen and skill that it takes to do that kind of show I was in tears the whole time I saw it. And I also got COVID. But anyway, um, you go to see something like that, and it's a different sort of theatrical thing. They have a lot more support. They have a lot more money. They're, you know, but when you see that, you can aspire to what they're doing.
Yes.
When you can look forward to, like, how do I want to get from here to there? Even if you're just honest with the audience and say, this is what we're doing. This is how I'm doing it. Here's where we go.
Mhm.
The performing garage, like, I hope I'm not rambling, but
No, you're
performing
not.
garage, the Worcester group
Yes.
did a lot of, like, exposing where you're going to go next. Richard Foreman, also, you could just have someone at a table, as long as the delivery was concise and committed and direct. It didn't matter what the text was, because it sounded good and it looked good. And so then the audience gets to make what those connections are. And of course, they always thought through what they were saying. They weren't saying gibberish, but if you ever saw a Richard Foreman piece, he doesn't do live theater anymore, but man.
But there's a trust that's held there with the audience, right? They trust that if you're talking to them, it's for a reason.
Yeah, and we would say, like, we struggled a lot with Dirty Basement.
Mhm.
Because it was so rock and roll feeling that, we didn't want to, like, we didn't want to, like, leave, we didn't want to hurt the rock feeling.
Mhm.
We weren't Hedwig, and we weren't, like, I don't know what the other rock show was, the Whiz Bang.
Oh, John
Um,
Ship was fine.
yeah, but a lot of people were kind of doing similar stuff, and so it's a challenge to find what you want the audience to get, and then, like, not to belabor it. At that point, Dirty Basement came out of Bunk Bed Commando. We had hosted the Henson International Festival,
I remember.
and I figured that I knew that I couldn't read people's cards through a hood, so I was like, well, I'll just become this guy, and you guys want to be the band, and we can just, like.
That's how the Dirty Basement came about?
Yeah.
I had no idea. That show, for those who haven't seen it, it's like the most insane what the hell is happening right now. But if there was a moment that you started to feel like calm, you were disappointed. Like, it just kept coming at you. It was a rock show, and you as a clown is just always funny, but it didn't stop. I remember the first time I saw it was at PS 122. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Upstairs, and
Yep.
I was sitting next to Heather Henson,
Hmm.
and there was crap all over the floor. It was like, an 11 p.m. or midnight show, something like that.
Yeah,
And
we had two shows. Yeah.
I was just starting to really see puppetry, like, really, like, not worry about, like, hiding so much, like, just go see, learn, and meet people. And I remember that show and looking at Heather, and I realized that we were both like, this is incredible. We both want to sit like another inch back the whole time. And so then the next time I saw it, I sat with Heather twice, coincidentally. We didn't even know each other.
Really? Wow.
Yep. We didn't actually meet until the following year. We just kept, isn't that the weirdest?
Yeah.
And she remembers one of the shows. She's like, yeah, I just remember being like, I'm sticking to the floor and I'm sitting next to this girl again and I can't leave because what is happening? You're just like on this ride. And I remember you on your little tricycle, riding your little tricycle around, and you stopped right in front of me. And I just looked at Heather, not knowing her, like, no, he can't talk to me. No. And she looked at me, and you talked to the people right over me. And I was never so happy. I was so terrified. And after that, I was talking to Kaylee Clemens, who said to me, because she saw me, like, no, don't talk to me. She said to me, when you start talking to people, you're going to be killer. And I thought, wow, if I had jumped in that moment, I think you would have killed me. I mean, you were on
No,
fire.
no.
You were on fire. It was just like nothing I'd ever seen before. Yeah, it's interesting to see everybody go through the arc of their careers, and not that any of us are done, but hit these very pivotal moments and then see those themes. The other theme that I want to make sure that we touch on before I geek out, which I can tell what's happening, sorry, um, is masks. Why masks? You have such a
Oh yeah, that's
uh,
well, I grew up in a my dad taught theater. Like I said before, he taught several friends that I ended up, or several students that I ended up being friends with later. Um, we are a very artistic family. I was very lucky in that.
mhm,
And he had, he also taught Santo Laguasta, my dad taught in school, in college. So Santo went on to become Tony Award winning set designer,
mhm,
costume designer. But he had several masks in the house that were, when I, before I even could walk, these masks were there. And I was always like, what are these things? And then it just became a process of, when I was in art school, I was serious painter. I was going to be a painter. I was going to move to New York and be a famous painter, like, you know, what, name your painter, whatever.
mhm,
Um, and then there was a guy in my printmaking class who was, and I had made some masks by then. And then my roommate was making masks, and I started to get pissed off and jealous because I was like, wait, I know how to make masks. I want to do this too. So people were making masks, and I made masks starting seriously in art school. And then when I moved to New York, and I was like, I'm going to be a performance artist,
mhm,
and I had a mentor, the alien comic Tom Murrin. He had masks too, and he never showed any sort of jealousy at all. He was like, he booked me to do shows. I kept making masks. That's how masks became puppets. But what I got obsessed with, my point was, is that it's a Tom Robbins book. I think it's Jitterbug Perfume.
mhm,
There's a passage in Tom Robbins' book about how the mask is eternal because it's frozen, and yet it lives beyond time or something like that. I'm probably misquoting it, but the power of the mask is that the mask possesses you. And when you go to take a mask workshop, which I've done a couple of times, I did a thing with a guy from Lecoq who I just through random friends. I worked at a private school on the Upper East Side, and they brought in a Lecoq master mask guy who had his suitcase of neutrals. And I was already like, well, I'm a mask guy. I know what I'm doing. And I watched this guy, and it just, part of the transformation of how masks take you over is what really interested me. And that's the same thing with puppets. Like, a puppet will take you over. It might take weeks and weeks and weeks of rehearsal, or it might take 5 minutes. You build it. It's always different. I've never seen it be at least in my experience, I've never had a consistent, like, well, this was faster, or it's just like, even if you're doing something for a show, when we were doing Helpsters, to see what Mr. Prim became past that, and to know that I was part of that, and it became somebody else's body, Marty, doing that, that fascinates me. Like how bodies inhabit a liminal space, like an object that gets you across. Does that make sense?
Yeah, particularly for me, because that was my draw to hats. It
Oh
makes
yeah.
it
Yeah,
makes people stand different, they speak differently, they everything
absolutely.
about them changes when they put on this thing and this object and this piece of art. And the art by itself is one thing, and the art inhabited by this person is a different thing, and each person who inhabits it brings a different life to it. So I completely relate to that, also because I in college I was really into masks, really into it. And somebody just brought it up to me recently because I've been doing a lot more body work, and they said, you should try some masks again and see how you feel. It's such a different, for me, I always had like out of body experiences, always, where like afterwards I would not really know what I did.
Yeah, that's
I love it.
that. Well, you've said it. That's it. Um, like Uncle Jimmy, even though it's makeup, that's a mask.
Oh yeah.
So the process of me putting that makeup on, and for everybody in the band, we would dressing up and becoming these mythical characters gives you empowerment. It also makes you really vulnerable.
Absolutely.
I think if you're doing it right, you should be vulnerable to, how can I put that? Vulnerable. You just have to be vulnerable. You have to, or you would do your best service to yourself as a performer is to stay vulnerable to the moment or whatever you're trying to achieve. Like there's so many great puppet performers right now. It's astounding. Like it's I do wish that there was a bit more. It's hard to say. Danger is not the right word, but I used to like being scared. Like I would go see people perform and I would be in the safe, unsafe realm. It's not quite the Andy Kaufman, not quite the Karen Finley, but I saw a lot of weird shit. And so I think it might be good for people who want to make work, like to press on what can get the audience a little bit out of whack, but then you also need to like get them back.
Matt Brooks was always good for that too. He always he would be doing something that was like on the edge where you were like, does he know what he's, oh no, and it's kind of fun to watch a performer who's messing with you a little bit, where you don't know if they're lost, but no, that's just part of the show. I love that kind of stuff. And that's not me as a performer, so I think I appreciate it even more, from
It's
somebody
not me
else.
anymore either. I've done so much of that that I like to be as I mean, I'm prepared, but there's I'm older now. I have more experience. It's just,
Yeah, it's different.
yeah.
I was thinking about you the other day because somebody brought up, this is a total segue kind of, I'm thinking about the transitions again. Somebody brought up you and I at the O'Neill after the Bratsov company performed. And to be short for everybody else, the Bratsov company came as a gift from George White, who's the founder of the O'Neill. He brought them, they were performing in New York. He brought them up to Connecticut to perform for all of us. And long story short, they didn't know where they were or what they were doing. And it was not the event that we all thought it might be. But in the end, it was super, super cool. Like when they realized we see them as artists for who they are, the whole relationship changed. But it was very late in the game before, and we found out that the translator was not actually translating for them. And we found out because when they were giving a talk back to us, this kind woman would speak at length because she realized, like, we understand. And then the translator would say, like, it was red. And we were like, no, she definitely said more than that. And James and I started this routine where I would give instructions during the week, and then James would say, go there, you know, this good. And somebody said to me recently, I really enjoy you and James as sidekicks. And I thought, oh, did you think? Yeah. And I thought, did you think that was a thing? And then I thought, oh, wait, no, it probably is. I hadn't
Yeah,
really
of course.
thought about us like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, okay, that makes sense. And in thinking about it, I was thinking about the things that you lose in translation. And
Mm.
and the way that we as artists fill in the blank, and what you do in the translation is fill it in visually, right? And hopefully all puppet artists do, but they don't. You know, if it's not something that you can show, you say it. But for the most part, you're showing us and you're showing us and you're showing us, and you're also giving us like a little extra information, right? There's always another line, there's always another through line. There's the main story and there's the secondary story, and sometimes there's a tertiary or a fourth. Like, there's so many layers, and it depends on where we as a participant choose to go, how far we want to go in. I was thinking about how when I watch your shows, obviously, you know, I should say, we obviously have worked together a lot, and I've produced James many times. So I have been in the rehearsal room where I'm like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. And do you want me to know what it means? Because if you want me to, I don't. If you do. So there, I have a little bit more knowledge than a normal audience member would. However, I find it really fascinating that there are people who all they want to know is like the deepest little things that you have hidden in there. And other people just want the surface story. This is all coming up for me thinking about this person, thinking that you and I for years have been punking people, which maybe sometimes, but overall, no, like we weren't walking around the planet team punking people, you know, like we just got caught one time because it was funny. But your shows kind of do in some places, and some places they don't. And I wonder how important the Easter egg is to you, how much fun that is to you. Like, where does that all come from? Sorry, long way in, but
No, I think you were very eloquent with that. Absolutely. At this stage of the game, for me, I hate saying for me, in my experience, is that when I want to acquire a skill or I see something in culture that I want to be able to do for myself in my work,
mhm.
I immediately try to figure out what that is. Like, I was obsessed with Steve Martin when I was a teenager. I would record him off the television. There were no VCRs. Wasn't any internet. I would put my tape cassette recorder on the TV and I would memorize his bits on Johnny Carson. Now I'm watching him doing Murders in the Building, and I look like him.
So there's that.
Yeah, but I think it's a big challenge to, first of all, when you work with people who support you and question you, and if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, that kind of stuff. That is the most important. That's why I love the O'Neill, not because I'm the smartest person in the room. It's because I learn more from mentoring people than they learn from me.
100%.
Like, I can't even express that even better than that. Enthusiasm, just sheer, again, obsession. If you want to get to that place, there's a bunch of different techniques to do it. I think I'm losing track of your question now.
Me too. I was talking about the layers and the Easter eggs and what draws you to the multi-dimensional stuff.
That comes from a love of comic books, writers like Alan Moore. Also getting obsessed with cross-pollinating narratives. Like shadows can be doing one thing and the narrative can be spoken in a different thing. That's what comics do really well. So shadows do that really well too. But you can also do voiceovers that are pre-recorded and the puppets are doing a different thing. So the audience gets 2 lines of, I mean, it's pretty obvious. I didn't invent that. That's from like Grotowski, probably, I think, or even before that.
I'm going to offer to you that it's obvious to you, but not to everyone.
Oh, okay. I don't want to seem like I made it up.
No.
But I saw a lot of stuff like Richard Foreman. He doesn't do live theater anymore. But if you went to see something like a Richard Foreman play at St. Mark's Church in the East Village, and it had absolutely no narrative structure at all. There was no beginning, middle, and end. It started and it ended. But he was in the back behind the booth with a bell. Like he'd just go bring, 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 bring. And the performers would have to go and do this thing. It was finding a way to get the audience invited, excited, is the biggest trick. You know, you can play it slow, you can play it fast. But for me, like the Easter egg thing, that again, with working with Tom, we banged out draft after draft, back and forth, back and forth. You were there for that. And then we had little place cards for all the puppets so we could do the traffic. You remember that?
Oh yeah, I use that example all the time when I'm coaching people.
Yeah. So I think it was Tom's idea.
Oh, sorry, Tom, I didn't give you credit. Now I will.
And so we had it all written. We were like, oh, this is all great. We got it. It's written. And we're at Standard Toycraft, which is now like a condo or something. Thank you, Standard Toycraft. And we got to the last scene, and as we're reading it through, we both realized that there's no way I could possibly do all these characters because now they're all on stage. And it was just like this whole collapse of everything we planned. We had put so many, like, we know this one, we know that goes there, we know this goes there, we had all the things. And I don't know how to describe it. It was just sort of like we found a solution, and then it was better than what we had written, because what we had written was just like basically everybody gets in the room at the end of the show and they're like, wah!
It's Rent. Everybody stand at the front. Now sing.
I wish it had the Rent income, but you know, to your question about Easter eggs, I, even in Dirty Basement, and even in shows before that, there's plenty of, I'm mostly a performer. We just like slop it out. If you put me in front of a microphone right now, I'll do it.
I did.
And I learned from doing Stuffed and Unstrung, which was like Puppet Up, whatever. I thought I knew everything about improv, and then I got to work with Patrick, and I got to be in that show and learn, like, your stories don't have to be super complicated. They don't need to be like, you don't need a lot of stuff. Sorry, motorcycles. He was really, man, you know, you think you know a lot, you've been a performer for a long time, and then you get to meet a guy like Patrick and
Patrick Bristow.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Patrick Bristow, who says like, you know what? Calm it down. And you would do these exercises where Bill went to somebody else says market, and he did, and everybody wants to be funny and weird and crazy, and it's like spaceship, and then you know you fuck your other scene partner because it's like spaceship. What?
Couldn't it just said carrot? Yeah.
And that really helped a lot, especially with writing Flatiron. yeah, it just get obsessed, figure out how people do stuff.
You said a couple things that really opened up stuff for me tonight. I'm really grateful, actually. Patrick Bristow, for a while there, I was like secretly taking improv, right? And I did UCB up to 4, and then they closed. What? Come on, UCB, I'm 1 away from like getting the prize and actually telling people I do this. Damn it. And for
I
years,
didn't know that.
yeah, see, secret's out because they closed and now I don't have to invite you. See, right on brand. So, so for years when I was going back and forth, I would do it when I was in LA. And Marshawn said to Patrick, I know this person, she's really funny. She'll never do it on stage. Can I bring her to a class? And he said, yeah. And Marshawn didn't tell me who was in his class, which was the loving gift of Marshawn. He didn't tell me who the teacher was. He didn't tell me who was in the class. Allison Mork was in the class, and Patrick Bristow was the teacher. And I
Oh,
and I walked in and was like, here's my $10. I'm gonna die now. And I I thought I was gonna flop terribly. And I got on stage with someone, I don't know who. And I'm sure they're super famous. I just choose not to remember somewhere in my psyche. And I got up and I did this whole thing. And afterwards he said, how long have you been dancing? And of course I had my hair in a bun, right? So I thought that's what he was talking about. And I said, not a day in my life, sir. And he goes, always play a dancer. And I said, why? He said, I bought every single thing that you just did. I bought it completely. And I was like, what? And he said, if you walk into every room and just start dancing, you will always be funny. So the next time I got there, I walked into the class and then right away I did a dancer and he goes, try again, next choice. And I was like, damn it, because he knew that I was going to play it weak, top of your mind. And he really did break open a couple of things for me that I hated in the moment, but I'm so grateful for now, because now when I'm in a conversation like this, I really do try to go to like, what is the impulse? Why is that the impulse? What's the through line that is bringing it here? Go. And I wouldn't have had that skill, honestly, if I hadn't have had him in the back row saying, yeah, that's the thing you do best, but that's not what this moment calls for. Really, really important lesson. The other thing that you just said that's really blowing my mind is that I've been struggling with a new piece and I really want to write this piece. And I don't even have pictures. I mean, I've done nothing other than like let it happen and it'll come. But I've been struggling with the two planes. And just today I was like, I think I know. And listening to you just now, I was like, I know exactly what I'm going to do. So thank you in a very self-indulgent way for listening to you talk like that, because I honestly think that these conversations that we have, they're very wonderful for me. I love talking with my friends and also people I don't know, but for other artists watching, just you sharing is a gift because it opens up
yeah.
stuff that may not be on their minds at all. Um, I do want to point out we're towards the end. So if anybody wants to ask any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But Tom Burnett put in the chat way at the beginning, transitions rule. And you're going to enjoy that. There's one question.
I'm going to be calling you tomorrow. I'll call you tomorrow.
Can I be on the call?
Of course.
We all need to get together. There's a question that I love asking artists, and I think you're a really interesting artist to ask, which is, what is your spiritual practice that you use to ground you? And is it similar or different than the spiritual practice that you find in your art?
Wow. It's not different. It's all part of the same process. I was very fortunate, like I said, to grow up in an artistic family. And so I had free reign to pretend I was an astronaut playing in refrigerator boxes, or pretend I was Jacques Cousteau scuba diving in the basement. I was very much empowered to be creative. There were times when, my imagination was seen as, maybe a little bit overboard. But even in that context, again, I was from 6 kids originally. That say this. It's a very interesting thing. My spiritual practice is meditation. And I learned that the hard way. It took me until I was broken to be able to sit and not have to be doing something. I used to think that my meditation was like, and it is like when I work on something, as you well know, when I'm working, if you come up next to me and say, hey, I jump out of my skin because I'm in a trance. But that's different. Once I got into, and I kind of lost it like during COVID, but I got back to it. And meditation is, I wouldn't say it's spiritual, but it's definitely something that helps to find like a base note of where you are, a baseline of consciousness. Because once you get to just sit with your thoughts going blah, 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 over time, that really helps. Because then you just get used to that being, it's not you, it's just the thoughts that come to you. Spiritually, I've always been, I don't even know how to say it. Well, you know what? I'm going to be honest. I had some psychedelic experiences when I was in art school. I saw some things that showed me certain things, and I've just followed that path. I was also Joseph Campbell and the Power of Myth, the TV show on PBS. I would watch that with my dad on Sunday nights because he was like, how's things going in college? You know, because he was a college teacher. He's like, are you smoking weed or is anything? I'm like, no, Dad, no. You know, he just wanted to be a part of what I was doing. And so we shared that, and there was a whole bunch of shamanism built into what they were talking about. Like follow your bliss, you know, that makes sense. But living your myth or finding, you have to find the clues to make the next move. You know, and I'm not saying that plant teachers or psychedelic drugs are for everybody, and that's just my experience that broke open doors where, from an academic Western art school point of view, it opened up a more shamanic, bigger picture, if that makes sense. I don't know.
It does. And it's interesting. It's in line with a question that somebody is putting in the chat, and they're asking, you know, knowing that you have a strong spiritual and shamanic connection, it does often capture the human condition. And the comment slash question is, you, James, has an understanding of both the audience and the artist's place. I'm curious on your take after these last couple of years, if that has changed your view on how the artist should challenge or nurture the audience. So I think they're asking post-COVID, you know.
Yeah. I'm struggling with that one myself. I don't know that I have a good answer. And I think it was Philip Guston, a painter who I admire very much. And he was a very successful abstract expressionist, impressionist.
Yeah.
But then he changed in his late career, and he did these weird, look up Philip Guston, late career, figurative, strange things out of his life. And I think in one of his lectures, he said that if you do the most personal thing, it becomes universal. Like if you dig deep enough into your personal, the deepest, darkest, ugliest,
yes,
everyone knows what that is. That becomes universal.
100%.
So it doesn't mean you have to, like, you know, spit blood on people or anything like that.
You've never done
But
that.
if only. personal means different things to different people. Obviously, it's in the word.
Mhm.
It takes courage, but sometimes it just takes I don't know, like masks take you over. I wish there were more opportunities for people to be taken over. I think like so much is market driven. You know, you want to be on TV, you want to be on TikTok, you want to do this, you want to do that. I think TikTok would be a better place if people spent more time thinking about, you know, instead of their butt wiggling, like, you know, what kind of content you might want to give. But that's an illusion too. This thing here, this screen, this is very different than a theatrical experience.
100%.
So you have to take that into consideration. And depending on what you want to do with content, the I know TikTok is all about being personal. You know, it's all there, which is great. I think it's great. It's what humans were meant to do. It's not theater, but if you want to do TikTok content,
Sure.
if you want to connect with people, it really depends on what you want, right? Spiritually, I struggle a lot right now with, well, like how do you even do a show? How do you get out and do it? I'm working on something with Tim Lagasse right now that I'm very excited about.
Mhm.
We'll see.
It's interesting because, I mean, we've met. You know that I completely agree with the most interesting thing is the most honest thing. Honesty can also be ironic. It can be funny. It can be shared in a variety of ways. Vulnerability can come out in a variety of ways. All of those things are valid. However, it is that you get it across, right? Comedy is only funny because it's true. You know, there's a lot of ways to get your ideas out there. But when it comes to puppetry, you've already chosen an object to put between yourself and the audience. So if you don't use that object as a vessel, what are you using it for? Because at that point, it's just a shield, right? It has to be transmitting something. And at some point, there's a spirituality that's going to come through to that, whether you're intending to or not. You know, the minute it's in your muscles and in your body and you're just moving this object and it becomes rote, you know, and now you're just breathing through it. All of those things, they touch on different levels of spirituality for each person, but it's always going to be there, right? Otherwise you're just putting something on a table and it's a prop. And
Well, and spirituality is a really big. It means different things to different people, I
yeah,
think,
there's a spectrum. Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it should be. I think people should experience their spirituality in any way they can. I have no judgment on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What I'm interested in is when a flow state happens,
Yes, better
when it,
words. Mhm.
especially puppetry or mask work or theater.
Mhm.
Um, I had it happen with Peter Lentz and the foot bitch, Eric Engelhardt.
How you met.
And that was on a TV set.
Mhm.
And we were doing Winnie the Pooh.
Mhm.
And it was the most benign, blah. The script was like he had to walk up. I think Winnie is a he. I don't know. Sorry to gender again. Walk up some books, get a banana from a thing, and then climb back down the books.
Mhm.
And we rehearsed it twice, and then we shot it twice, I think. Maybe Peter will correct me. He's not watching. But the puppet did it on its own.
Yes.
And we all like took our hoods off because we were in green. We were in green at the time. Eric was really into that shit. Eric Engelhardt, for any of you out there, was a stellar puppeteer and a great, what would you say? He had great ideas about what makes good puppetry. I don't want to say it's theory. He was very practical.
Mm-hmm. He rehearsed.
Yeah, I miss him a lot because we would have long conversations about how we want to approach the thing. And when we did it, we all took our hoods off pretty much simultaneously and went, did you feel that? Did you feel that? Did you feel that? And so when you have that team thing, it happens with 2 brains or 3 brains. It kind of shakes you up, because the going theory is that you rehearse, you do this, and this happens. But when that all kind of like, that's what I get excited about. That's what used to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, you said that, Mungo. I want to just touch on something before we wrap up. For the mental health of people watching and people who are going to repeat what you just said, which was so beautifully stated. I coach a lot of puppeteers, and I often hear like, I've never had the flow state, or I operate in a flow state when I'm dancing, but not when I'm doing this or whatever. That's something to be celebrated when you have it and when it happens. And it can certainly be something to chase if that is your personality. But good puppetry doesn't demand that you live in a state of flow. And I just want to say that because you are somebody who has many places where you have experienced, or others have watched you experience, whether you are aware of it or not, this flow. That is a gift. And not everybody has that gift more than once in a lifetime. And that's okay. That doesn't make you less of an artist. And
No,
your voice less powerful.
Absolutely not. In fact, I would say, chasing flow is it's a red herring. It's like trying to find happiness or love or fulfillment. You get it through the doing of things. There's a great book called Flow. I can't pronounce the guy's last name. It's just called Flow. Mm-hmm. He writes about the state of flow and how different people access that state, mm-hmm. Which can be really helpful because a lot of people are in flow and they don't think it's flow because it's not associated with being a puppeteer or doing this or doing that. Yeah. And flow means different things to different people. It usually means you're in a state of relaxed awareness, feeling creative that's beyond what you perceive to be your capabilities. What you perceive to be your capabilities. It happens to people in sports all the time. It happens to people in pretty much any line of work or play. The important part is play. Playing beyond your boundaries and not being worried about it being significant. And not worrying so much about paying attention as so much as you let yourself go. It's like if you're in a sandbox, you just want to pile up some sand. Like one of the best exercises I've ever learned is just like pouring cold water into your hands like this. And then you just let it flow through your fingers, and then you just let it flow. And you focus on what that feels like. And so that feeds into any kind of performance or art making. And otherwise, just get obsessed with things that you like. See how they made it. Like look at Ronnie Burkett. He's all over. Look at what he's done. Look at how he gets it done. And do that. You can't copy it. Look at, God, there's so many things. Pina Bausch, dance theater artist. There's a great documentary on Pina Bausch. She took an idiom that was dead. It was like modern dance was this kind of like, I don't know, like painting was dead. Totally found a new way to do it because she just did her own thing. Pina Bausch, Pinabah.
Yeah, Robert Lepage, Henry Matisse did it, right? Like you just keep
Right.
inventing, just keep.
Well, that's the other thing. Like, look outside of your idiom. Like, you can look at puppetry. That's great. There's lots of that. And like anything, there's good, there's not so good. There's great painting, there's not so great painting. The secret, I think the real juice is like going outside the idiom that you're looking at.
Yeah.
I mean, dance, especially if you can look at dance and figure out how bodies move in space, that's a big thing.
You are brilliant. I love spending time with you.
I like spending time with you. That was fun.
And yeah, I think it's a good time to wrap up. I feel like you just ended with quite the masterclass. And there's a lot of people saying what a beautiful mentor you are, what a supportive voice you are, how you have wonderful perception and thoughts of art. And I will make you cry, so I will stop. But yes, you are very loved and very appreciated. And I am grateful for your sharing tonight, as I'm sure everyone else is. So thank you.
Very grateful for you having me. It really means a lot.